YouTube, it's 616.
Yes, would love to.
Here, let me get out so I can share it.
Go live. We are live.
We are live. All right.
That's merch.
That's merch. Are you laughing at me?
That was just fantastic.
So you have a third eye.
So, welcome. This is episode 220. Now, it's interesting because this is our first YouTube live, as we've been talking about, but it's not the first time that we've done episode 220 on YouTube live. So, kind of crazy. We had a big fallout with the computer system crashed on us, and it was weird. So, we're actually kind of needing to redo the whole show on what is the show topic? Self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
I crave self-esteem. I noticed, Neil, that you didn't change the title either. Victoria's
Thanks,
titling
Neil.
was much better than mine. I crave self-esteem. So super excited to have you here for the inaugural Through a Therapist's Eyes YouTube Live. This is where, if you've not seen us on the podcast or on the soap platforms before, we come on live before we record the real show. That you'll hear on Spotify, iTunes, and I love saying wherever you get your podcasts. So, we're just hanging out, getting ready to fire up.
You
the topic.
match.
I thought so.
You
Thank
match.
Thank you.
The gray
Okay,
and
he's
the
got
green.
on like three
Thank
different
you.
gray tones right now, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying you have to be matchy with your gray tones, but
Okay, Victoria was telling me very clearly that I didn't match, and that's not prompted. World, this is John's.
sorry, is that not
You-
prompting self-esteem?
My self-esteem is fine, but I wanted to wear the hat, and Victoria's like, no, it doesn't match. You can't do that. And I'm
Okay.
like,
No.
And now you.
Oh,
that wasn't staged. You said.
Au contraire. I think you do match.
I thought so.
And I'm not colorblind.
See, but we're also both boys.
Yeah. Well, you see, I could be colorblind. I just don't know.
I suck at matching and wardrobing and all of the.
Look, I'm wearing gray and green. I'm your twin.
Oh dear, that's not good.
Yeah.
So, ready to go, Neil, when you are. I think it's probably time. But did we ever do anything with YouTube? Switching over? Should we welcome the YouTube Live people?
We are on YouTube Live.
Oh, we.
Remember,
Oh, I mean Facebook Live. Now I've switched my brain.
I sent the post to say, hey, go check us out over here.
All right, we are good. Kind of excited about the mentor moment. We have a new YouTube Live, folks. We have a new thing that we're going to do, which is
segment.
a new segment, a new concept. It's the mentor moment. Is we sometimes have current events, and today we have a mentor moment, which is Victoria's question about how we do what we do. John, I'm surprising you with this.
Surprise!
How we do what we do.
Yeah, she has
What
I'm,
questions.
I'm
particular-
going to ask a question
Okay.
as like
This
a mentee.
magic
on-
moment. Okay, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I love it when he breaks out on song.
Okay, so my mentor.
Well, not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay.
No, it's for the show.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
Oh yeah, we're not recording.
We're not
I'm
recording
sorry.
yet.
I'm jumping ahead.
Come on,
Oh
girl.
god.
Well, I'm kind of grateful now that I know that I'm going to have this sprung on me
Yes.
Again.
in the
You
future.
know how I
in a
do.
few minutes.
You
Yeah,
know
in the
how I
near
do.
future. Yes, I do.
In the near future.
So you're comfortable with your mic.
Yes.
Am I good? I'm good. Okay.
I have done dry runs on recording, not recording, recording, not recording.
So we're not gonna
Make sure nothing breaks.
blow up this time.
Hopefully we make it past 8 minutes.
Fingers crossed.
Oh my gosh!
And we're good.
Wow.
All right. Are we ready?
That's roll.
Hang on. I gotta get my. I was so about to tell you.
Oh no! False alarm.
Yeah, because I
producer
am not
pulls
going
the
to do this
plug.
a third time.
I know,
So
right?
If this doesn't happen,
This will
we're
hurt
mov-
my self-esteem.
we're gonna move
if
on
we
to
have
the
do
next
it a third
topic.
It's easy
time.
on the show prep. I'm not gonna lie. It's easy on that.
If that happens, I'm gonna have to wear a wig and shave my head and go back and forth and act like each one of you if it's my fault again. All right, guys. Are we ready?
Let's get her done.
Get my timer together.
Get her done.
Get her done. Okay, sorry.
3,
Hello there, and welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes. We have a special episode 220 on March the 9th, right? This is March the 9th, where we have our very first YouTube Live folks that have already been hanging out with us for a little bit on the cameras before we pulled the mics. So we have made the switch from Facebook to YouTube. So you'll find us on YouTube Live now. Pretty cool, pretty excited about that. Go check us out. You can see us as we're actually recording the show. Most days, Thursdays at about 6 o'clock to 6:15, we fire up and record this show. So welcome to what we do. So this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get insights from a panel of therapists in your home and in your car. But Victoria, it is not what?
It is not offering therapy services of any kind.
There you go. That was so bland, though. We need some excitement. What's
I'm
up?
sorry.
What's
And
up
this
with
is
you?
not offering any therapeutic services of any kind.
No therapeutic services.
What was that? It was like, this is not delivering therapy services.
I'm
Anyway, we have
sorry.
John Pope that is with us over there.
Hey,
Good evening, sir.
good evening.
And we have Miss Victoria Pendergrass, not
Thank
to be
you.
confused with Pendergrass. Got
Who
it
is
locked in.
related by marriage to
Pendergrass?
Teddy Pendergrass.
Really?
Yep.
Who's that?
The singer,
Oh, the singer?
Oh,
Teddy
I-
Pendergrass.
I live under a rock, guys.
I mean, he's even
Oh,
before my time.
That's right. He's not Vince Gill. So.
Got the book Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self out, I guess, for 2 years now. That was shocking to
Wow.
me. The marriage book is coming out this year. I have made a decision it needs to be pumped out for sure. Definitely help us out grow the show. Apple, iTunes, wherever you find your podcasts. We really need to ask you to help us because it really helps us get found, helps us in this industry with the star reviews. And
it helps
and to
in
type
the algorithm.
the algorithms, yes. The typing is a big deal on Apple iTunes specifically. So help us out. And then contact at throughatherapisteyes.com is where you can find us to interact with us. And this is, guys, the human emotional experience. And we do endeavor to figure this thing out together. Check out the hat, by the way, you folks on YouTube. We got a little merch here going on. We cover the matching. Was that on Facebook Live or was that on the podcast? I think that was on
I
the
think that
podcast.
was on YouTube Live.
It was on YouTube Live. Yeah.
Right.
So
So
before we turn
yes,
the mics on.
I will say,
Yep.
unlike Victoria,
Yep. Go,
that,
baby.
that you match.
Thank you.
Okay.
You are exquisite.
Maybe I should just say it and say that I personally would not wear that hat with your outfit. But, you know, to each his own.
Well, I was
And-
told y'all to take it off after we started, so I don't think I'll fidget with it either. I mean,
I'll call you out if you start to fidget with it. I'll just tell you to take it off.
oh, wow. Well, now I think I need to take it off now. Or should I keep it on or take it off? What's the
Keep it
vote?
on.
Keep it on? All right,
keep it
we'll
on.
keep it on.
You remind me of that old
I like
Twilight Zone where the guy had the third eye.
Oh.
And he was in a diner and it was an alien invasion.
Oh, dear goodness.
Yes.
Neil, I was told we need shirts because somebody wanted the eye on the front of their shirt. They thought that would be cool. Where's our shirts? Do we not have shirts? There are no shirts on our merch thing.
Really?
Okay.
What's up with the shirts?
I remember, I know we're off topic a little bit, but I remember
massively.
when you showed me all the different types of eyes that you wanted.
Oh yeah, that we were
That's
looking
right.
to. Yeah,
when you
we
were
sp-
trying to pick your
right
art.
cover development and.
And you kept going back to this one. You even did
did I?
Yeah.
It is very captivating. Catches your eye.
I've got my eye on you.
I'll give a prompt out to Morgan James Publishing, my publisher, that I am very appreciative and humbled to be a part of. They did all of that. I kind of chose and helped out a little bit, but that's on them. They did a good job. So, yeah, I don't even think I said the topic yet. I'm so sorry. This title is I Crave Self-Esteem, right? I crave better self-esteem. So we're going to be talking all about self-esteem, but we have a cool new thing first today. You know, we've done current events, you know, from time to time. When stuff comes up, we'll pop that out. I have a first segment that we want to do with, what are we calling it, Victoria?
Mentor moment.
That sounded like a raised
think-
pitch voice in question. Let's get more like...
I looked at Neil when I said it because I wasn't sure. He came up with it.
Mentor moment.
Mentor moment.
Yeah.
And you're the mentee.
I'm the mentee.
gather.
Because
Well, you know,
I mean,
we might
I'm a
all have it
mentee.
from time to time.
but
yes?
you know,
I'm
I
a
am the
mentee.
freshest, the newest.
Well, we
to
all
the-
are mentees, that's for sure.
Um,
So Victoria with the mentor moment.
Mm-hmm.
This was born out of a moment where I just couldn't get to her. She was asking a question or something. I was kind of like, look,
I always
sorry.
have
So-
questions for Chris throughout the day.
So what's up?
Okay, so my question today is about couples therapy. So what do you do, or how do you manage when couples seem to argue the entire session?
I'm not very good at it.
I mean,
That's awesome.
you
You know what? I'm going to tell
That's
you.
the one.
I'm going to tell you a quick story.
yeah.
You're not in it. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about it. I'm sure you do too, John. But very early in my career, I learned that this was a thing. When I'm doing a couples session, and the couples come in and they start doing their thing, and they get a little bit elevated, heated. One person says this, the other person says that, and they start going back and forth, and they're doing it, and they're doing their thing, and I'm like, wow, okay, and it gets elevated and a little bit more elevated, and elevated. It's like, next thing I know, she gets up, walks out the room, slams the door, and he looks at me, he says, well, I'm really glad we're here. I mean, that was good, and I'm really hopeful about this, and he looks at me, he says, well, do you think you'd be able to keep her in the room next time? It's just like, it was one of those moments that I'm sure maybe you've had, Victoria, that stems this idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I'm still very new to, I've only been doing therapy about 4.5 years now ish.
Yeah.
And so, and I only started seeing couples when I came here to Metro Atlanta Psychotherapy. And so, it's still very fresh. I see a good number of couples now, but
Yeah. What do you think, John? I got a lot of thoughts. What are you thinking?
Well, I think part of it is experience.
right.
Then you're going to get that.
Yeah.
And part of that is that there are going to be couples where they're intractable and you can't seem to reason with them. I think there's sometimes, and I think you mentioned that, where you had where the woman just marched out. She bailed. They're going to do that sometimes. Most of the time is that you would establish some rules to begin with, that you don't.
Give me an example of some rules.
Well, there's you're going to be direct and polite to one another. That you will use the I statements.
Okay.
And you will not use any defamatory or name calling, any type of. Let's say one of the clients, one of the couple members of the couple, they can't call each other names, and you stop it then and there, and then you do a reset. You're polite, you're but firm.
Okay.
And I think those things happen, in the course of developing the therapy experience. So it's not like, okay, we're doing couples counseling. Let me get my rules list out. Will you agree to this, and this?
Right.
It's more just like, the art of what it is that we're doing when you begin to identify somebody's getting elevated, somebody's escalating, and I'm going
We
to
use our
intervene.
inside voices.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, indeed. We use
So,
our inside
I
voices.
guess I just don't want to be passively just sitting there while.
Yeah, and you don't want to be.
while they go at it, and because I feel like maybe that's what they need, because they can't get that, they can't do that at home. But I don't like how to.
Old school therapy in couples counseling, I feel like you ended up falling into being a referee sometimes, and we don't want to do that. I'll tell you, post Gottman's material, emotion focused therapy.
Right.
I was much more adept at what I was trying to do prior to that. And so my little journey with this, Victoria, was I just want to know the foundations. I want to know the patterns that you have. And if I
Right.
see somebody getting elevated or escalated prior, I would kind of be like, okay, how does this fit into like what typically happens? And then I'm taking the topic off the board, because that's usually what happens. Well, you said this. Well, I said this. And then you just
Right. Yeah. He said. She
Right,
said.
right,
Or
all of that.
He said. They said.
So I take that
whatever.
off the board, and I want to go into like understanding, well, what happens when you engage on a topic? Let's forget the topic. We'll come back to that as needed. And then you do this and you do that. But now with EFT, the patterns are much more like ingrained. and I can go into a description of emotion-focused therapy, the abandonment and the engulfment, and really get that foundation put into place. And before they even really get escalated on a topic, they're kind of like, "Oh my God, this is what we do. This is the way. Like, are you in our house?" And I'm, I get responses like that all the time. And I'll tell them, like, no, I'm not at home, obviously. I don't have any video cameras up. The other thing I'll add real quick, but I know the patterns that typically, can be profound. And then I'll also add that humor is a great way if you can get the rapport built and humor engaged in de-escalating this thing.
I think that's key, is using humor, because I think what happens is that you, by engaging in humor, you allow people to step out, relax, and step outside of themselves.
So then, for what I'm hearing from you is that, I know we've talked about Gottman a few times on here and conversations that I've participated in myself, but I think maybe I'm hearing that I might need to do a little bit of my own side research into.
Oh, absolutely,
EFT,
dude! You get an EFT conference, man. Go unequivocally. You need that. That would be 5 stars, fantastic. Okay. But let's move into our topic, and we can talk more obviously anytime.
No, this was great. Thank you.
I crave better self-esteem. Think about it. Where does self-esteem come from? When did life damage my view of myself, events or people? When did life damage my view of myself? And how many times has that happened over the course of your life? And lastly, how do I build self-esteem? That's what everybody wants to know. And, we talk a lot about that. But, boy, it's interesting. We're doing a round 2 of this, right?
That's right. But, hey,
here we go.
It's going to be a lot more intense and a lot better.
Well, I have a lot more energy than I did last week, I think. And so my reference is we actually recorded this episode. I don't know where we're at with shows. If we missed a week, I apologize. We just had a blow up of the machine, man. Neil's machine went to what? How should we say?
It cratered.
Yeah, kapoot. It popped, he says. So we recorded a whole episode, and now we're re-recording the whole episode. So these should be well thought out thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a week ago, so I'm not going to promise anything.
Also, there might be a bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
So what is self-esteem really? Confidence in one's own health or worth or abilities, right? Having a sense of self-respect. The article that I kind of leaned on and used, I thought was really pretty neat because it gave kind of like a sense of like what this is like to experience rather than really what it is. So check this out, and I'll see with you guys how you think about and work with self-esteem. But self-esteem can affect whether you like and value yourself as a person. Well, that was interesting. Can make decisions and assert yourself, okay? Recognize your strengths or feel able to try new or difficult things. These are all like, what do you experience with self-esteem? How does this operate, right? How you show kindness toward yourself or move past mistakes without blaming yourself unfairly. You take the time that you need to be yourself, for yourself. Believe you matter and are good enough. And lastly, they pointed out, really believe that you deserve even a sense of happiness. Whether you have high self-esteem, these things are going to go well, or if you have low self-esteem, these things are going to struggle. So, I don't know. This show prep, I remember commenting, guys, was like really easy to do.
Yeah.
And I think it was really easy to do because I just like flew through it. Because don't we deal with this like all the time in a therapy experience?
Yeah, a lot of root issues come down to self-esteem.
Yeah.
And I think our last time I pointed this out, someone pointed out again.
There you go.
That
she remembered one of her good points.
I did. That there is a difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. And
we did that last week.
And so
she did point that out.
And so self-confidence is your the ability that you can do things like basketball or math or, those types of things, where self-esteem work comes from like your worth.
Yeah. So in other words, you would say that self-esteem is something that is always going on in the background
Yeah.
that you want to. And self-confidence is
It's
for
more, yeah,
skill-based.
like your
or-
qualities kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Oh, that's interesting, John. I didn't really think about that differential. So you kind of pulled out of what Victoria said, that self-confidence might be kind of what you show, but self-esteem is the
It's a state
foundational
of being.
piece in the background that's operating.
Right.
Oh, I like that. That's
I
pretty
like it
cool.
too.
The internal versus the external.
Right.
Self-confidence
Is
versus self-esteem. Oh, that's cool. Oh, I want to play around with that in my head for a little bit. I don't have time right now, but it's a unique perspective.
Yeah. That raised my self-esteem.
What did?
Just what you just said, because of that idea that,
Oh.
I mean, it's the background.
Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? How, which is a cool way to make the point. Your self-esteem can go up, or it can go down. How many times throughout the course of a day?
Oh,
good-
it's
a
like
good number.
It's like the ocean waves coming
Yeah,
in,
coming in,
Right.
coming
going,
out. Yeah.
Tidal
Tidal.
forces, waves, constantly in motion. Experience of what somebody says, something nice or something terse, or if they say nothing at all, and you're kind of like, wait a minute, what did I do? What did I do wrong? You know, I mean, it is, John, isn't it? It's in the background. Self-esteem is very different than self-confidence, Victoria. I hadn't really thought
Well,
about
I mean,
that.
and usually when I have clients that come in that say, you know, I want to work on my self-esteem or self-confidence, I usually try to clarify the difference between the two, because they might have good self-esteem, but they just want to be able to project that in their abilities, which would be the self-confidence. And so then I can kind of help them understand what exactly is they're looking for to help improve.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think, so let's go to a little segment of understanding a little bit about where does this really come from. And, you know, I ran down through a list and whatnot, but in my list, well, let me just open it broadly, actually, first. Where's self-esteem come from, John? What says you?
Oh, I think it comes from your earliest days,
Yeah.
and about nurturing and the environment that you're raised in. Basically, I did a little homework.
All right.
Okay, and does anybody recognize this?
Yes.
It's Maslow's.
Maslow's
Oh, that's
hierarchy
Maslow's.
of
Okay.
needs.
Physiological
So
yeah.
I think that self-esteem comes from the fact that you would have your needs taken care of at the very beginning, and then you are, in other words, are you safe? Are you fed? Are you loved unconditionally? And that it's not transactional. And so there's a sense, I think a person's self-esteem increases exponentially to how much they are loved unconditionally. And
That would be probably highly correlated, of course. Yeah.
yeah. So my sense of it is that just as a child is hugged or loved or is esteemed by others,
Safe, secure attachments.
safe, secure attachments.
Can we say that safe, secure attachments create
I like
a
that.
high level of self-esteem? There's a quote, Neil.
Yeah.
Safe, secure attachments create a high level of self-esteem. I think that's a true statement.
And I think that builds. Now, the problem is that we live in a world where people are not so nice sometimes, and sometimes kids
We
are,
don't have safe, secure attachments.
right, and
Right.
so your self-esteem takes hits, and your hits.
Oral.
Yeah,
So you're saying, for example, if you had a kid who came out to his parents or her parents or whoever their parents as gay,
okay.
and the parent, you have two scenarios where the parents are make them still feel safe, make them feel love and belonging. They might have a potential higher self-esteem
Exactly.
than if you had another set of parents who I don't know, kick the kid out, said, okay, you're not my child
Reject,
anymore,
deny.
rejecting. And I mean, that person might still be able to recover from
Sure.
their self-esteem, but they're taking that hit. As
Multiple
far as,
hits, and that's to the
Yeah.
very core of their being, because the place that they are to feel the most secure and safe and feel and belonging, they're not getting it, and so they
Right.
start looking for their self-esteem on external
In other
things,
ways.
in other ways,
Yeah.
and then they start
Which can be unsafe,
right,
potentially.
right.
Okay.
You know what's curious? I don't even think that it popped on my list, but as we're talking, oh man, how did that? Man, I know it was on prior shows and listen stuff. I was just listening to you guys' dialogue, and I've made the point before. And as a matter of fact, I think we have a quote somewhere about it that having a critical or highly critical person in your life destroys, probably at the top of the list, self-esteem.
I'm not clapping because I approve. It's
agree.
It's I would agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And they could be subtle, very subtle. Like,
Even subtle criticism, but
do
yes,
you really want to eat that? Do you want-
constant and chronic criticism
Yeah.
is horrible to the development of self-esteem.
I feel like any millennial that is listening to this
Uh-oh.
is able to understand this from their parents. Because a lot of times,
Yeah.
I mean, and probably other generations, but
I was going to say, listen, I remember being in the 80s and Gen X. It's like, oh my God, these crazy, stupid kids. John, you probably said it back then. These people were going to be the leaders of the world, and it's going to be so terrible. And I mean, we're
Well, no, I'm
fine.
even
We
thinking of
figured
in
it
the
things that-
1960s,
Yeah,
there
of
was a
course.
commercial, and it was Ed McMahon doing the commercial, and it was about Socrates. And he quoted Socrates.
Okay.
Yeah, said, "What is this generation? There is like 350 years BC, or 400 years BC."
Yeah.
and they were talking about how disrespectful and how terrible the kids are.
well, I mean,
But it's funny to this point. I didn't mean to cut you off,
No, you're
Victoria,
fine.
but that is like a generational redo over and over
Yeah, you're
and
right. I mean, yeah, you're
over again. It's horrible
Well-
what we do to young people in the criticisms we deliver.
And I'm just thinking kind of what John said as an example, the subtleties of it, I think, is what it can be a really killer. Like the example he used was, are you sure you want to eat that?
Yeah.
Like little things like that necessarily, and then you're like, you may not realize it in the moment, but later on you're like, wait.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
not
like-
that men don't worry about this either, so I don't mean to be sexist, but I'm in boy world, not in girl world, but you say that to a girl, are you sure you want to eat that, Victoria? What is girls going to do? Like, what, on my
I'm probably
fat?
gonna-
My
yeah,
image? My
yeah,
body image?
my thoughts
Uh-oh.
are going to
Am I-
spiral.
She's going to go and go and go.
Yeah.
Wait, I have
You're
my
a tween.
clothes are too big.
You're a
It's-
tween, and your body's changing,
oh,
and
it's horrible.
already.
Acne
And
all that.
And all of that. So you're very self-conscious. And, of course, I don't know what it means to be a tween girl, but I was a tween boy,
Yeah.
an adolescent, and I got zits and everything. And
Oh, dude, I was a stick. I was like people called me pencil neck. That's what I was called, pencil neck. I'm like, it's okay. I'm certainly not anymore. That's for just look at me. But,
you're a fine specimen.
thank you. I appreciate that. My
Or do you think
self-esteem
a lot
just jumped
of-
up.
Hunk of humanity.
Do you think a lot of the criticisms also come when you say something about yourself and someone else like agrees with you?
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, like I feel like I've gained a lot of weight, and someone is like, well, yeah, like.
Well, there's
I don't know.
probably a
I mean-
plethora of ways to deliver
sorry, I just tried to
criticisms.
throw
But
that out
again,
there.
the reality of it is if you have a highly critical person in your life, that at the top of the list we need to highlight crushes self-esteem. And I'm going to jump and look at the camera and say, if you're doing that, stop. Because that is such hardcore destruction to the development of young people especially, but people that are full-grown adults have that going on, and in a full-blown way have the same crushing experience with their self-esteem. So stop it. Be nice. Compliments are better.
Well, no, some people may not even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. Go a little with that.
Well, I mean,
Well, I think it could be generational.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that is wonderful as my own childhood was, and that there were some subtle things that actually came from generations past.
Yeah.
Subtle criticisms, thoughts.
Did I distract you, Victoria?
Yes, you did.
Let's take a break in the middle of our show. We got merch you can see on YouTube. This is the Through a Therapist Eyes cup. We got the writing on the back of it. You know, it's actually my handwriting, right?
Yeah,
what
I know.
did you say? What did I just destroy your focus and concentration?
No,
What
I
happened
mean,
there?
you just totally interrupted John, but continue, I guess.
Did I apologize?
No,
if
no,
I
no,
did.
that's fine.
It says in my
just
handwriting,
hurts
let's
my
figure this
feelings.
thing out together. Pretty cool coffee cup, just to highlight to our merch. Listen, we are growing show in 2023, and we really do want to ask your help to grow the show. And one of the ways to do that is go to our website and get some merch. Got the cool hat there, get the cups going. Neil swears we have or will have shirts. We got quotes coming out. Really, there's some pretty cool stuff that I want to ask you to check out. Great gifts, nice little trinkets, cool stuff, not too expensive. And it does really help the show because we get a percentage of that sale. So a direct ask on my part to you. Let's get back to our topic, though. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was just saying that some people may not realize that what they're saying is criticism to others. And then John made the comment that a lot of it's generational, which I completely agree with. If a mother heard her whole life growing up, oh, well, you better lose the weight before you get pregnant, because once you get pregnant, it's hard to lose the weight. And then she now is more likely to pass that on to her daughter, and so on and so forth, because until someone breaks that cycle,
that's from generation to generation
Right.
to generation, and so you have to, and so it takes a real sense of self-awareness,
Right.
and not self-centeredness, but in a sense of healthy esteem, or to be able to say, I've got to break this cycle so I don't give this to my children or my grandchildren.
Well, and I think sometimes it also helps by speaking up and letting that person know, like, hey, what you're saying is very critical and has a really big impact on my self-esteem and potentially others' self-esteem, because if they don't, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so, but then once you know it, then you have the power
That's
to
assuming
actually,
that person is sensitive, to be
Yes.
able to sensitive
yes, that
to
is
that.
also true.
I think a lot of times, John, they are to a large extent. I think Victoria's thought is really an important one, because I think a lot of times people really are being critical and don't know that they are as much. So it is a bit of a needed awareness to be mindful. There's another word about, right? So yeah, that's cool. I appreciate that dialogue. So let's go a little bit to, we're already in this section of like, what life events create damage, which criticalness is at the top of the list. I didn't even have it, I think, the last time we recorded this show. But here's a question I think that we've already answered to a certain extent. Is it normal to have low self-esteem? Like, people are listening out there like, yeah, I think of myself negatively all the time. How normal is that?
Well, I mean, it's
really?
a lot easier to think of the negatives than it is the positives in your life or in anything. So
I think we're
Right.
wet wired.
Wet wired. What's that mean?
In other words, you've heard of hardwired, but this is our brain, and so it's
Yeah.
a soggy mass of cholesterol. But
Yeah.
but when we're on the plains and we're in the African savannah and we're all hunters, and we have to be careful, or we have children and they're out there, you want to be able to watch for the danger, and so you will see the danger more likely than you'll see the positive, the good things. So I don't know if I'm making sense here.
No, I think that in several things psychologically that we talk about, and that we work with in our therapy offices, we are wet wired. I gladly think of it as hardwired to see the things that are a risk, to be aware
I was just being
of the
clever.
problems. Yeah, well, you are
Exactly.
super clever, John Pope, and the wet wiring is a cool thought. It's a cool concept because you really are geared that way. We're okay on time. Because I didn't say it earlier. I guess I'll circle back because it fits here. I think of the overview of mental health. I've talked about it on a show many times. I call it the tale of two tapes. And it's biological genetic realities on the one side of the equation. Your genetics, nutrition, your exercise, body drives how it is that we feel. But then on the other side, you have the social and emotional, and those are your life experiences, your primary life's relationships, daily stress, the grind. That also drives how we feel. And so there's this dynamic mixture between what it is that we experience in the world and then what we genetically have going on. And I'm going to submit to you, and I think your all's conversation really highlighted that, that this comes really on primarily that side of the equation. The social and emotional side, John. That's what you started with,
Right?
From way back, the life experiences and the life's relationships and the daily events and the grind that we're in. That's really what's driving self-esteem, isn't it? Way more than
And and whether
not
you're,
exclusively, but way more.
but whether you're doing it consciously or not, you do reinforce those negative self-images and so if you have low self-esteem, you had some events that occurred as you were growing, developing, and even though that might be a relatively short period of time, it might be as long as you're in a house, but you could reinforce that in your narrative of life until you're in your 60s and 70s and even 80s. And so I think it's very important to be able to try to nip that in the bud as soon as possible and do it quickly and rewrite the program or the wiring so that it can rewire so that you would look more positively about yourself.
Which interestingly leads us to a little bit of an issue that we haven't talked about yet, perception, right? I mean, you can perceive all sorts of things that are around you, and we do have a bend and a slant towards the perception that you have. Is it possible, Victoria, that people might be saying something along the lines of very innocuous statements, but you might perceive them as a criticism and whatnot? Does that happen?
Yeah. So what you're saying is, so let's say somebody has a negative self-image or self-esteem.
Yeah.
When somebody later on comes around, you're saying that that might be perceived by the person that here's that comment that it reinforces the negative self-image.
Yeah. Yeah. That said it much better, much more eloquently. Right? It's almost like we could filter out the positive things that are heard or said and really hear, back to your wet wiring, right? Only the negative things that are either perceived or very rarely put out in that space. There's a lot of things moving around in this. Your whole psychological system is kind of geared in a certain way based on a lot of this biological or this emotional and social stuff that you've experienced for such a time. Now, I am going to give a little bit of a tip towards the biological component. Isn't just void here, because I want to do a segment in a little bit about the biological system with diagnostics as being a really important factor also. It's just a heavy lean on that side. But listen to this list, right? So how commonly do you experience this through a life cycle? This was just a glancing list. I'm curious what you guys think about it. Firstly, realize that this is what we mean by living is what came up in my mind, living these experiences. And of course, we know living to be growing, right? So you have a lot of growing experiences. You have a lot of living experiences. And man, there could be a lot of challenge. How about a high school breakup or a middle school breakup or an adult breakup? Or, part of the thought here is that don't you really experience the emotions at any point in your life cycle when you have a breakup? That's a tough spot. Job loss or parents. Oh, I did have it on my list. I forgot. Parents being critical on the many times that they unfortunately are. A car accident or a police ticket. What? A police ticket's going to hit you or having an accident. It's like, that what does that do to your self-esteem?
Don't go through Maynardsville, Tennessee.
Oh, dear. God, what happened, John? Let's
I got-
heal. Let's heal here. What happened?
Okay. I was 19 years old. I was long haired. This is back in the 70s.
Wait a minute.
Wait, you had long hair?
I had long hair. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Went to
I
my
need a
shoulders.
picture, bro.
Yes, you have
I
to.
was a cutie guy. It's always cute. But anyway, and so it's late, and it's like 12 o'clock in the morning, and I'm driving from Florida up to North Lake where my cousins were, and to spend a week with them, and I get stopped at the first place, on the outskirts of town, and it was a sheriff's deputy, and so I'm nervous and all of that. My hands are shaking.
Oh yes.
And of course I had long hair. This is early 1970s.
Daggum hippie.
Yeah. And they said, we got a light out. So I said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to North Lake. And he said, okay, just be careful and we'll see you.
Okay.
Went down a couple of
Well, that's not so bad.
not too bad.
I don't think he's done with the story
Yeah,
yet.
I know, right?
Couple of miles later. Now this is a long town, Maynardsville is. And I get pulled over again, flashing red lights. And it's the town police.
Jeez.
Pull me over. And I'm like, I'm starting to shake. Okay, I'm really, really getting a little nervous, all that. And he said, where are you going? I said, well, your light's out. And I said, well, I know. I got pulled over before by a sheriff's deputy. And he said, okay, make sure that you drive carefully and safely and you get into North Lake. Okay, get back in the car.
Okay.
Third time. I go out right at the edge of the town.
Are you serious?
It's state trooper pulls me over.
Good Lord.
Okay. And now by this time my voice is quavering. I'm shaking like this. I get out of the car and all of that, and I'm thinking, I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail. And the guy, and he said, okay. He looks at my license and all of that, and he says, you're a little nervous there, son. I said, yeah.
I have a pound of cocaine in the back seat.
Yeah. So get back in the car, and I'm driving out like I'm in. I said, why didn't I get a ticket? And this guy's just rolled over laughing. He's got his radio in his, and he's talking about me.
Oh.
So they had all called. Evidently, this is what I'm taking. They had all called ahead. They wanted to, because this
you
guy,
lined up.
They
I'm
would've just scared
scared
the
to
crap out
death.
of you.
We got a nervous one here.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I didn't sleep for a day. I mean, it was like,
No,
okay, that hurt my
I
self-esteem.
think I just snorted.
I hurt
Oh
my
my gosh,
self-esteem.
that's terrible. John, I'm so sorry those officers were so mean to you.
I'm traumatized.
I'd like to think that they were maybe a little bored. so
Yeah.
they were like,
Yeah.
hey, let's,
Middle of the night, yes.
Yeah.
For sure. The donuts and coffee weren't
Well,
working
I had
well enough.
Florida license and tags,
and you had long
plates.
hair.
I had long hair for me.
But you know what's funny about that truly is, and thank you for sharing that story. And I
great, thank
experienced
you.
you really saying like, no, that did bother me. That was like a factor, And the thing that I would point out, and part of what I'm doing with this list is, these are so prominent in our lives. These are the things that we really remember. I had a police pull me over, and I ended up having 3 police cars around me as a teen, and a lot of young men particularly have had that. It was intimidating beyond all get out. I'm like, there's all 3 cruisers.
That's a rite of
Lights.
passage for being a male teen,
Well,
teenager.
imagine getting in a really bad car accident, and I know a lot of people can empathize with this, and then being scared to death to get back in a car again. Or I rear-ended someone one time on not on purpose, but like I remember for a while. I mean, I slammed on brakes and like stuff had still hit them, but I remember for a while after that, like, it was hard for me to be a passenger in a car, because if someone was driving and they got a little and it was even hard for me to get in the car. I would brake like so
Oh,
much
yeah.
more frequently than
yeah, right.
you know, someone was 5 cars lengths
How
ahead
old
of
were
me,
you
and I
then?
would start
You're already
braking.
tapping.
How old were you?
When I got in the
in the
I've gotten in
accident?
several wrecks, but
Okay, the one
well,
that-
in this
that
specific
scarred
one,
you. That
I
scarred
was
you.
in graduate school.
Okay.
In my internship, so I was probably 24, 23.
Okay, so a couple of years younger than you are now.
Yeah.
A couple. Let's move on a little bit with this list, right? Is how commonly these things happen, right? One of life's many failures, perceived failures in parenting choices. You know, our spouse. I just wrote our spouse, right? Facebook and social media comparisons. You know, a recent quote that I think I created: "To compare leads to despair." It's a hit constantly every
Very
time we're
true.
looking at stuff. The trauma, or to a lesser degree, drama that's in our life, bullying, loss of a friend, loss of a loved one, loss of any kind. Really, you know, we could go on, and I think that we've kind of given a good, handle on. This is what we're up against. Like, this is a
Social media is so much more brutal than
yeah.
I mean, we still
Oh,
had our
Lord.
moments, but it's 24/7.
Well,
It
and I
doesn't
think I
stop.
made this comment last time is that, you know, a lot of times we have to, and I work with this with my clients too, is we have to remind ourselves that what we see on social media is never real. Like, I mean, that's kind of how you have to approach it, is anything you see on there
It's fake.
is fake.
Yeah.
And
Fake
even,
book is what's called.
yeah,
you know.
and even from like someone like me, who, I mean, the only people that follow me are like my friends and family, you know, like I don't, and so, but I'm not going to post a picture with like mascara running down my face, having a meltdown or having a panic attack or having anxiety attacks
Doubts
or
and
like
fear moments.
Yeah. I mean, and it's nice when you can see that from people, but still like sometimes it's hard to question like, well, then why are they doing that? You know?
And people aren't
so-
trying to be fake, but it's just the way that we try to present ourselves.
Package.
The packaged face mask that we put on for the world, and it's okay. It's not bad. It's what you said,
Well,
self-confidence.
and I know there's some social media places now where you can turn off. I can't remember which ones do it. I want to say like Instagram or like TikTok or something, where you can turn off your likes, where you don't see when someone likes your photo.
that's
so
brilliant.
so then that way you're not tempted.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm not posting this for
Clipping
the
you out.
likes, and then you can't use that as like a comparison of. Oh, well, I only got like 5 likes on this photo, or I only got 100.
There was a
and,
South
like-
Park that was done on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I don't watch that, but
and one of the boys he got because he liked somebody that was not popular. Everybody unliked him, unfollowed him, and so his self-esteem just absolutely cratered.
yeah. And so imagine if things would have been different if he wasn't able to see that all those people.
This was
had, like,
Facebook.
yeah, but I mean, imagine
yeah.
if he wasn't able to see that.
Yeah.
So because of time, I'm going to give an honorable mention segment here to the biological realities, right? Because I think this is a significant factor. God bless you, producer Neil, if you heard that in the background. The diagnostics that we get in our field of mental health are really important, I think. As a matter of fact, I would make the point, firstly, directly to my fellow clinicians, that oftentimes I find a sort of a paranoia worry about diagnosing. And for a very long time in my practicing, I've never understood that, John. Like, why are we so worried about that? Because I have found that really having a clinical issue and not knowing that we have a clinical issue in the first place is terribly destructive to our social and emotional self-esteem, right? And so
Because you don't know where you stand.
you don't know what's going on. Like, you know something's not quite right.
But you don't have a name to attach to it.
Right. And I think this is part of our duty and obligation to the public because we specialize in diagnostics, the art and the science of diagnostics is really important in our field. Can I make that bold statement?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I agree.
Right? So a note to clinicians, I really kind of want to point out that I have found that the insight about people's diagnostic situation is strongly liberating for people. And with my insight style of therapy that I feel like I kind of do, that's a key piece in the beginning rapport development, with somebody. I want to get us away from the fear that this stuff creates.
Well, I mean,
No, you go
I
ahead.
mean, just kind of what you mentioned earlier, like if someone's experiencing the symptoms of depression, but they don't quite know that that's the word to put with it,
right?
By telling them like, hey, you have
this is a
major
thing.
depressive disorder, and it's moderate or severe or whatever the case may be. I mean, that gives them a name, something to grasp on.
That actually gives them hope.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, but you do it, and that's why it behooves the clinician to be very accurate. Oh yeah, and to be absolutely even-handed in this description, and also very gentle and empathetic and compassionate.
Yeah, boy, those are
the person
part of the science or the art
person.
Of it.
Yeah, and the person who says, "Well, like I think I've used this illustration before, but I was teaching a class, and it was a diagnosis of all things, and I had one of the students said, "Well, my name is Joe so and so, and I'm bipolar," and I'm saying, "Yeah,
wow,
okay, well, that was a label that he took onto himself, and so." The way that could have been is he is. How could you guide that student in? Here's a little mentor thing. How can you guide him into saying, well, it's not that you're.
Yeah. I'm raising my hand. Can I get this one?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, ask him where he's from. Ask him what he likes to do for fun. Ask him, who he hangs out with. Ask him like all these other things, and like make the point, like, dude, are you serious? Like this does not own you.
Exactly.
Well, it's just like someone who gets a cancer diagnosis. I'm not Victoria with cancer. I'm Victoria, which I don't actually have cancer. Just putting that out there.
Okay, that's good.
But you say like I am someone living with cancer, or I am someone living with depression. I am someone.
But cancer is the reality, but that's not defining
who I am or who you are. Yeah.
Right.
So check this out, really, with some of these things, right?
Oh, I like how you did that.
Huh?
I like how you did that.
ADHD, right? Mm-hmm. Diagnostic issues, they lead to self-doubt. They lead to critical self-talk, like galore. Victoria, I think you shared on the show, with ADD. Yeah. I mean, you could probably speak to that, right? Like, I see this a lot with our youth. I don't want to spend too much time on each one of these diagnostics, but that's a good one to use as an example. Like, you see a kid acting out, you see a kid defocused, you see a kid like not able to sit still and moving around and moving from topic to topic, getting up out of their seats. Like, what do you believe they are? Well, they're the lazy kid, the unmotivated kid.
Unfocused.
They're the rule breaker. They're the problem child.
Yeah,
they're the problem, and that's the way I see them. What does that do diagnostically to the emotional development?
Yeah,
largely the self-esteem to that kid.
But you can explain with the ADHD diagnosis.
Yeah.
And to be able to say, okay, and then you can identify areas where that kid could actually start building her or his self-esteem.
Right.
And
it's crucial.
Crucial, yeah.
It's crucial. So I wasn't sure if you had comments, Victoria. I'll move on.
I just agree that, instead of becoming the kid who can't focus, now you have a name for it, and then you can actually work towards strategies to
retrain your
brain to
and recruit the person for his or her own treatment.
And now we're moving a little bit into like, what do we do to build self-esteem? But real quick, again, honorable mention, depression. Why am I feeling this way? Things are essentially fine around me, but I am feeling all of these symptomologies that we have with depression. Lack of motivation, lack of interest, the lack of a drive, sex drive, appetite, all these things, hard to focus, concentration gets foggy brained. Why do I feel this way? But yet the world is fine. So the self-esteem just takes a dive. Same thing with anxiety and clinically worrying about things, and bipolar, where you're manic and you make impulsive decisions. These are real things. Addiction, dramatic pause. the shame and guilt that comes from having an alcohol, drug, sex, food, gambling, or online video gaming addiction.
And then
is
when
like
you're in recovery and then you relapse.
huge. Relapsing, yes. And then personality disorders and the feelings that you get with all that. Like, there is a space, I'll say this, and then we'll move to more focus for the rest of the time on how do we build this. But there is a space for understanding your self-esteem and the psychological system around self-esteem through the biological component of diagnosing. And I think that's an important piece. Did a pretty good job with the honorable mention, I think. So how do we do this, man? We've started to talk about it, but...
Oh, I'd give you first prize.
How do we build self-esteem? First prize with what?
Oh, that.
Yeah. So how do we build self-esteem? What do we do? Oh,
Why y'all looking at me?
I think we just went to you. I don't know. It's
I mean, you can do things by self-reflecting, meditation, therapy.
right.
There's a plug right there. I mean, you can do things like practice gratitude, journaling. Like, there's lots of different ways
See, you're
that you can
you're
build.
literally doing now what I did with my show prep, and it was like, when I started thinking about this, you take,
brainstormed.
you
Yeah.
brainstorm. You take a minute, and it's kind of like, okay, let me get my brain set. And then what you did, Victoria, was like, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. It's
Really
like,
only because I've been working with it. I worked with this on a client.
It's huge.
Earlier, but
So this is the thing is also with if you're an adult, then if you are working and you've developed your self-esteem and it's improved, then when you have children yourself, that would be a great opportunity to start at even an earlier age where your children won't have those self-esteem issues.
yeah.
And they will not just feel very self-confident, they will know they're self-confident.
So what you're doing is talking about modeling.
Modeling,
Modeling,
100%.
yeah. It's funny. I'll share an interesting moment that I was trying to have with, my younger son very recently, actually, and I was really wanting to help him understand because there was something he was doing. I honestly forget what it was, but he was like, "Look, I don't know how to do this." It's like, what do I do? And I really wanted to work with him to help him understand, like, there are so many times I told him, Adam, that I have come across things that I don't know what to do. And I've really had to learn this as a more confident person later in my life than earlier in my life. I really wasn't in a lot of ways. And I would get really down on myself, like, I should know this. And I got to tell you, there is a high percentage of the time that you're going to figure it out rather than know prior to doing. The human emotional experience, we figure this out together. There's a lot of reasons why I love that phrase, and this is one of them. If we understand to give ourselves some grace, if we understand to give ourselves some peace in mind, if we give ourselves the space to just experiment, to try something, to figure it out, boy, that's a big self-esteem builder when you realize that's the case.
Well, and I think also accepting the fact that self-esteem is a lifelong, I don't want to say
up
battle,
and down journey. Up and down journey.
Yeah, and so, people like LeBron James or Steph Curry or people they don't just stop practicing basketball, right?
No.
I mean, they practice it for as long as that's their career. Like, they just, And so, same thing with any other sport or any other career. We take continuing education classes, like blah, blah, blah. So, self-esteem is basically the same thing. You have to, it's going to be there all the time.
You have to
you're
practice it.
Yeah, because you're going to always have things that try to knock you down. That all those things that we listed earlier.
We spent a lot of time.
Like that, those don't just stop once your self-esteem is good and on the up and up. So it's a constant.
This is
journey
crafted
every day
and recrafted and redrafted and redone, like chronically. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't say that to be like intimidating or like,
it's a bummer
that, oh my gosh, I have to do that. I say it in more of an empowering way of that this is something you can choose. Like you can choose to work on your self-esteem every day.
Yeah.
So we're off to see the wizard.
The Wonderful
So,
Wizard of
Wizard of
Oz.
It's also like, I guess, an inverted corkscrew. And,
Okay. An inverted corkscrew. What do you mean?
Well, you start at the very beginning as a little human, and you grow up to be a bigger human, but you're revisiting some of the issues of life all the time. Am I loved? Am I loving? Am I accepted?
Am I enough?
Am I enough? Yeah. And so your world becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, but you're spiraling upwards to a higher level of development. But you revisit some of the same themes all throughout your life, and that's, I guess, I recapitulated what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
And can I add to that metaphor? And when you go through a really tough life stance, like I have anecdotally begun to really realize that in a life cycle, when you go through a separation and or divorce or a lost relationship, even in middle school or whatnot, you can really cycle down that little thing pretty quick.
Right.
You know, your inverted, what you call it, corkscrew. You can, the air can come out like boom. And suddenly, like I'm thinking of somebody I'm working with now, it's like suddenly at this point in life, I have doubts about everything. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I went through this now, and I don't know if I'm lovable, if I'm good at what I do, if everything was a lie, if I'm
Right.
not cute, if I'm not, you know, it's like you can, you revisit things, John, and when things really, really hit you, it is normal, by the way,
Keyword normal.
and manageable to rewind up that corkscrew.
Exactly. And you've got to be able to talk to someone to be able to do that. And I think that's why therapy is very important.
And you know what? Besides therapy, I
Counseling.
would say friends, man. You know, supportive people in your life. Oh, boy. How about this for a point? Contrary to destructiveness that criticism creates, people that are supportive in your life, that could be friends or family, are a huge factor in building yourself up. You are like the 5 closest relationships that you have. We have said that before, somebody else's quote, but that's absolutely true. If you have 5 supportive people, I mean, it's one of the things I love about Metrolina, our group, honestly, guys, and I mean this as a compliment to those of us that are here. You know, we have a supportive environment. How important is that, right, to clinician development, to your day-to-day? It's huge. Conversely, if you work at bank such and such or agency such and such that are nailing you for this and nailing you for that, like, oh, it's crushing. It's just crushing.
And I think we've all been in jobs.
Yeah, I have.
I have.
Yeah.
So you've heard this before many times. I love this activity where you choose one thing that you like about yourself, one thing that you don't like about yourself, only one thing that you don't like about yourself, and you celebrate the one that you do, you work on and manage the one that you don't, and that becomes 2 that you like, and you choose one more that you don't like. I know I've said that
Then it
several
becomes
times
3,
over.
then it becomes 4, and so
Builds
on
and
and
it
so forth.
grows,
Yep.
and you build up that corkscrew John was talking about. You know, correcting past actions with apologies. Well, how about that for building self-esteem? Take responsibility. It feels hard, scary, but really good, and more integrity and grounded stability gets created when you apologize and then learn from whatever you've done, because we all do it. I don't know that we think of apology as being an emotional self-esteem builder, but I think that it is. Learning about self by gaining insight of emotional experience.
Can I build on that a little bit?
Sure. I'm
What
sorry.
you were saying?
Go ahead.
No, apologizing to others for the past also allows you to forgive yourself, and that sets you free.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, go a little further with that.
Well, it's the idea that the person that you may apologize to, that other person may not accept it.
True.
That's unfortunate. But that doesn't have to stifle you. That doesn't have to be another kick in the shins or kick in the butt. it can also be an opportunity for you to say, okay, I did my part. I did what I needed to do in forgiving. So
It's huge. It's a big, yeah. I love that. Thank you for adding to that, John. You know, yeah. Let me go a little further and add. Right, like I thought of the idea of celebrating yourself. Do people give themselves permission to celebrate ourselves?
Probably not often enough.
Yeah, like I find people in job interviews. Like I was weird. I loved going on job interviews. I really did. And that was just because it gave me a chance to like experiment with, is this job a fit for me? Do you think I would fit into there? Let me tell you why I think I do. And I don't mean to think that I'm arrogant about it, but it was just like, hey, let's talk about some new creative thing that we could do together, and that's exciting. Can you celebrate your skills in a job interview, man? Like, yeah, give yourself permission to do that.
And allow yourself to enjoy that you learned something new, that you widened your world. I'm about ready to burst out in song. I don't want to do
it.
I just want to celebrate another day of living.
Oh yes,
Remember that?
it took me. I needed the second line to get it. Yeah, man.
Let's just celebrate.
It's totally cool to be able to do, right?
Yeah.
And then learning about emotional experience. I made a joke. I'm like, yeah, buy the book, the re-understanding emotions and becoming your best self, right? I think learning about this though really like takes the mystery out of an emotional realm. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I feel like people are really terrified oftentimes to dive into a therapy experience and learn about the emotional realities and my emotional. I mean, it feels
Some
intimidating.
people, yeah, they don't want to
Scary as heck.
confront the truths about themselves
So they-
or
Yeah.
what's really going on.
Is it okay to learn about that? Again, give yourself permission.
So
right?
unstrap the straitjacket. Allow yourself to be who you are. Really.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
it.
Take the straitjacket off and be willing to explore.
It's an awesome metaphor as well. Boy, you're the metaphor man today. How about accepting things like compliments, for instance? But
Thank you.
stop fighting to change things that you cannot change. That is another aspect. You will drive yourself a bit crazy
Yeah.
if you try to change things that you cannot change. And your self-esteem in trying to do the impossible will probably take a hit.
Right.
Fair to say,
Fair to say.
So
live the serenity prayer.
which is, I gotta quote it all the time, my friend. Hit it.
No, you do it. I don't remember things. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can change and what and
To
The
accept
courage.
the things I
The
cannot
courage.
change.
The courage to change the things that I can.
yeah.
And the wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. No, it's absolutely sound. Whoever wrote those words together, I thank you, because I quote that man or woman all the time.
And you don't have to be religious to live by that.
No,
It's
definitely
it's
not.
almost not even really a prayer, is it? I mean, it's like it's almost a
quote.
statement
Kind of a Zen thing.
It's a Zen thing. The way he says that, that's awesome. So I wanted to highlight, like, if you're looking at this segment of like, how do I build this, man? We just did a show on I want to feel empowered, right? Episode
Yeah,
what,
go listen to
Neil?
it.
215, 217.
I
That
can't remember.
nails. It takes another deep dive on
Maybe.
this whole deal. I think Neil said 218, right? Like that really gets a lot, is because, if you're building empowerment, you're going to have a positive self-esteem.
Yeah,
I think they linked together rather well. Did you?
I would agree.
Yeah. And then I got lazy here. I just added things. There's another cool article on our show notes, but recognize what you're good at, build a positive relationships, be kind to yourself, learn to be assertive, start saying no, give yourself a challenge. That was some of the things they quoted on that article. But
And I remember that no is what? No is a complete sentence.
is it?
It is.
Is it?
It is.
Yes.
How is that so?
You can say no and that be it, and not have to explain and not have to give a reason
I see
why.
what you're saying.
Capital N-O, exclamation point,
No.
is grammatically a cool sentence. Okay. I could take that.
Well, not just no is a complete sentence.
Yeah. And so is yes.
And yes is also a complete sentence.
You know, when I'm doing assertiveness stuff, I like to say, you know, and boundaries per se, you know, that could, I think honestly, we could do a whole month on shows on boundaries, of course, but boundaries are say yes when you mean yes and no when you mean no.
Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no.
Right?
Right.
Like it's been said way before me.
Right.
That's solid. And that feels empowered, which we just said connects to self-esteem.
I got a little list here, which is similar to what I think.
I love it.
Okay. Self-esteem is the confident person or for self-esteem knows the difference between confidence and arrogance, is not afraid of feedback, does not people please or seek approval, is not afraid of conflict, is able to set boundaries, is able to voice needs and opinions, is assertive but not pushy, is not a slave to perfection, is not afraid of setbacks, does not fear failure, does not feel inferior, accepts who they are. Now, that's a process.
What a powerful way to take us out, John, I think, in building up yourself, celebrating yourself, and engaging yourself in the ways that John just poetically read. Listen, we hope you've enjoyed this episode to dive deep with us on what it is that we all struggle with and what it is that we all crave. John, you said it beautifully there. Listen, y'all are enough. Celebrate that. Build yourselves up. And we'll continue to be figuring this thing out with you together. Listen, have a great week. Stay well. And we'll see you next week.
Bye,
See you
Al.
next week.
All right. Wanna say bye to YouTube?
That was good, John. That was awesome. Bye,
Thank you.
YouTube. Any thoughts,
That-
questions on there?
That's what I was
Yep.
looking
Okay. Take care, guys.